our support of our AAPI community. And I took it very seriously as I delivered the message about gender-based violence and building capacity and support. On the local stage here at Los Angeles City College, as a member of the Race, Equity, and Social Justice Center, a center that will promote a designated space for all disenfranchised ethnic groups to stand in unity while we as a collective group find ways to stamp out hate and to provide equitable opportunities for all. To underscore today's purpose, I offer this poetic piece that I found in my research. It was written in the 1800s by a Lutheran pastor, but it is very relevant today. And it reads, "First they came for socialites, and I did not speak out because I'm not a socialist. Then they came for trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." The takeaway for that is we are not going to let our Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders family stand alone. We stand with you today, colleagues, friends, in solidarity as you navigate through this challenging time, and we commit to you that we will be there to support you in the efforts to stamp out hate in your community and to eradicate gender-based violence. We love you and we're here for you. Dr. Berry?
Good afternoon, everyone. When I think about the civil rights movement, oftentimes, many and most reflect on the African American struggle. But oftentimes we leave out key components, key conspirators, key allies. And during that time, we had allies, Asian Americans. Asian Americans fought hard for labor rights, imperialism, and all the things that my ancestors as African Americans fought for. And as the director of the Race, Equity, and Social Justice Center here at LACC, I intend to continue to advocate and fight for diversity and equity and inclusion and the sense of belonging for all. And some of the things we have intentions on doing is creating a platform for everyone, a diversity council that includes Asian API groups. Another thing we also include is looking at the way administrators are being treated. Our students, oftentimes we think of our students, but we forget to ask our brothers and sisters, how are you feeling? I believe that was a little derogatory. Do you want me to speak up for you? Another component is leadership, right? When I think of leadership, I think of me being a leader and passing the baton to the future. And what that looks like is creating a leadership that has the ability to be humanistic, situational, transformational, influencing, and crosses all geographical areas and boundaries. And so as the director of the Race, Equity, and Social Justice Center, I'm here for you all. And we stand in solidarity with you all. And now I pass it over to V.
I think it's Dr. Gallagher, you're going to do a remark first?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who's here today. I appreciate the participation from across the campus. I want to send a deep thank you out to the group who put this together. And I know that it was a combination of several different staff members from across the campus, across different types of groups. And I greatly appreciate the work that you put into putting this program together today. We need this. We need this very, very badly. I have known since I came to city and started looking at data that we're not serving our communities well, because when our communities are made up of more of a population than is attending our college, I know that there's a very definitive reason why we do not have a higher population of different types of people on our campus. I know why we don't have a higher population of Asian people coming to our college, because our Asian population of students is going somewhere else. Those who live closest to us, who were the easiest college to get to, don't come to us. And I know why. The why is, just as Dr. Berry said, these students do not feel as if they belong. That is crucial. And I know that if our students feel like this, there is no doubt in my mind that our staff, faculty, and administrators feel this way too. It's just when we started to talk about the horrible circumstances faced by our Black and African American community after we came together when the George Floyd murder occurred, and the murders that are occurring now in the population of Asian American Pacific Islanders in this country is unfathomable. Fathomable. Sorry, I didn't pronounce it correctly. I'm committed, as I have been when we first started these conversations in June, to make sure that all of the different groups of people who engage with LA City College have a strong sense of belonging. That is going to take a lot of work. The very first step is for us to listen and to learn. I thank our group of Asian Pacific Islander Desi Americans, APIDAs, for coming together to educate us today, to help us understand what it has been. This is not new. This is not new in this century. This is not new in the last century. This is not new in the century before that or the century before that. This has been hundreds of years of racism and despicable treatment of people who look different from white Europeans. I am here today with you. I commit to you that you are an integral part of this college. This college is made the best college by you and for you. We stand together. We will take action. We will be vocal, and we will not tolerate this anywhere near our campus. I am listening, and I will act. Thank you so much for coming today. This is really good for all of us to listen to our Asian American community and Pacific Islanders, to help us to understand and to know what we need to do to make this a better place for you and for your community. Dr. Lee?
Thank you, Mary. Hi, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is V. Lee. I am one of the deans in the academic affairs area. Thank you so much for joining us in this first of what I hope to be many dialogues. Unfortunately, 2 hours is not enough to share our journey, concerns, and needs that has been accumulated over the past 10, 20, 50, 100 plus years. So consider today as a beginning of a very, very long conversation. So a very quick note, and thank you, Mary, for using the acronym. Our group moving forward will be using the acronym AAPI. It stands for Asian Pacific Islander and Desi Americans, because we want to be inclusive of our South Asian siblings. So in case, because, you know, for a while there, we've been using AAPI, API, etc. So I just want to make sure you know what we are doing. I want to share our agenda with you for a little bit here, because we only have 2 hours. We are limiting each segment to, you know, a limited amount of time. And again, because this is the beginning of a conversation, I'll do my best to keep you on task. I will introduce each faculty member who will be guiding each segment. And then, of course, we hope you join us in our conversation. Their job is to manage the discourse within that segment, including, you know, time management and keeping the conversation on topic, because, you know, lots of us are angry and we may go off tangent. So first up, very quickly, first up is Professor Jeff Hicks from the English department. Professor Hicks will be sharing some information and data that would kind of provide some context about today's conversation. So Professor Hicks.
Sorry, just had to give me a second. Okay, so here's the thing. I think what's important to know, I mean, we're all coming here today in large part because of the killings that happened at Asian-owned businesses last week. But what people really need to understand, I think, is that anti-Asian racism, anti-Asian hatred is nothing new. This is something that has been going on in our country ever since Asian people have been coming to America, ever since Asians have been immigrating in the first place. And I think people really need to understand that this isn't something new. This isn't something that just happened out of nowhere. That our Asian community has been facing this kind of racism, this kind of hatred for a very, very long time. And so just to start today, the history of Asian immigration to the United States goes back to the late 1500s, in fact. But although the history of immigrants coming from the Philippines and from Japan in particular is a long one, Asian immigrants specifically have always seemed to be considered separate or apart from the United States. In 1854, People versus Hall is the US Supreme Court ruling that stated that people of Asian descent could not testify against a white person in court. This ruling specifically freed a white man, George W. Hall, who had murdered Ling Sing, a Chinese miner in Nevada County, even though 3 Chinese witnesses had testified to seeing the killing happen. Even though the original court had ruled that Hall was guilty of murder, Hall used an obscure law that said that specifically mulattoes, that mulattoes and African Americans could not testify against Chinese immigrants and against Chinese people. And it wasn't until 1873 that this law was invalidated in California. What is known as the Tong Massacre or the Chinese Massacre happened on October 24th, 1871, right here in Los Angeles. This was a riot against the Chinese community after crossfire between rival Chinese groups killed a white police officer and a Latino bystander. However, anti-Asian sentiment had been rising in the city for quite some time. During this incident, 17 Chinese men and boys were lynched, and a total of 19 Chinese people were killed during the attacks. At the time, just to put this in perspective, Los Angeles only had a population of around 6,000 people. After hearing of the deaths of this one white policeman and the bystander, a group of over 500 people stormed the old Chinatown area, set fire to and looted Chinese-owned businesses, beat and murdered a number of the victims, and hung them, some of them after they had actually died. In 1968, the United States actually signed the Burlingame Treaty. This was a treaty that provided China with a most favored nation status for trade. And it provided US immigrants in China certain protections, most notably the protection to practice their own religion. So it protected United States immigrants to China. The Burlingame Treaty also encouraged Chinese immigration to the United States. We recognized that Chinese immigrants coming here would actually help the country. However, most notably, it did lack a clear path to naturalization. Cut to 14 years later, the US would reverse course entirely and pass the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882. In this act, Congress banned Chinese immigration for over 10 years, specifically because Americans and American politicians, who for the most part were just really hoping to capitalize on the anger of white people in the United States, argued that Chinese immigrants were a bad thing because they were taking American jobs. They were taking jobs away from white people. The same rhetoric that has been used to demonize immigrants forever, like literally forever. In 1885, a massacre of Chinese miners in Rock Springs, Wyoming happened. This was closely following the Chinese Exclusion Act, as though the conversations in Congress and the explanations behind the law might have spurred them on. White miners in Rock Springs, Wyoming, who were angry about Chinese laborers taking their jobs, killed at least 28 Chinese men and injured 15. These same miners burned Chinese homes and businesses and caused over $100,000 in damage. That's $100,000 in 1885 money. That was only one of the incidents that happened immediately after this act that literally limited Chinese immigration. The act happened before the string of violent attacks on Chinese immigrants. Congress passes an act that tells the people of the United States that Asians and the Chinese people are the enemy, that they should be excluded. And then throughout the country, we see incidents of hate and of physical attacks against Asian people. In 1900, shortly after the San Francisco earthquake, when a bubonic outbreak happened in San Francisco, it was quickly blamed on the Chinese community, even though it was the Chinese community that was hit hardest in the earthquake. It was centered very closely to Chinatown. And much of the Chinese community were living in the poorest conditions with the least access to health services, conditions that would make it easier for them to feel the brunt of the plague. People found it easiest to blame the disease on immigrants. Here we see a clear history of blaming disease on Asian immigrants directly. This isn't, what we're seeing now is not something new. And we know about Japanese internment during World War II. We know that during World War II, the United States opened up 10 internment camps and several other relocation centers and forced Japanese immigrants and Japanese American citizens to leave their homes and become detainees until the war was over. I just want to reiterate that, number one, the United States seized the property and the homes of these citizens in the process. Many people believe that this was one of the reasons why it happened in the first place. That part of the reason for internment was just a way to seize the property of successful Japanese and Asian business people who had been operating on the West Coast. Number two, the majority of those interned were actually citizens of the United States, some of whom were third-generation citizens. And number three, those interned of draft age were asked a number of questions to prove to quote unquote, prove their loyalty to the United States, even though those who were questioned were for the most part already US citizens. They were asked questions, specifically question 27. Would you be willing to serve as a combat soldier, nurse, or if female, in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps? And they were notified if they were accepted, they would be serving in a segregated unit. So even after these people had had everything taken from them and they'd been forced into an internment camp, we came to them and said, hey, will you serve in the US Armed Forces? And question 28, will you swear unqualified allegiance to the United States and forswear any form of allegiance or obedience to the Japanese emperor or to any other foreign government, power, or organization? A ridiculous question on its face. We did not ask this of German immigrants or citizens. We did not ask this of Italian immigrants or citizens, only of the Japanese. And the problem was, the people in these camps felt intense pressure to say yes. Many of those interned actually did serve in American forces during World War II. These were citizens, these were Americans. And we treated them as though they were enemy combatants, as they were the enemy. Something that would continue on after, the events of 9/11, when our country turned on the Desi community within this country. In 1982, Vincent Chin was murdered by two white men who worked for the Chrysler Company. One of whom was a supervisor there, and the other was recently unemployed. And again, they blamed him for being out of work. And Vincent Chin was not even Japanese. He was Chinese. In 1984, Vietnamese shrimpers in Texas were burned alive by members of the Ku Klux Klan. In 1984, these incidents are nothing new. What has been going on in our country is nothing new. Our country has a history of racism and violence against Asian people. But that does bring us to today. After our president goes on TV and blames coronavirus, calls it the Chinese virus, the Asian flu. Even before that, when he entered into a trade war with China and went out of his way to demonize Chinese people. Since then, we have seen a drastic uptick in anti-Asian violence. In 2000, and this is from a report from CSU Santa Barbara, and I'm going to end with this. Over the last year, anti-Asian hate crimes have gone up 149%, while overall hate crimes in America's largest city went down by 7%. In San Francisco, anti-Asian hate crimes went up by 50%. In Philadelphia, over 200%. In Cleveland, Ohio, over 200%. In San Jose, California, 150%. Right here in Los Angeles, anti-Asian hate crimes rose by 114%. In New York City, 833% over the last year. And that's part of the reason why we're here today. And I've been asked, Sean Pomasese, if you'd like to add anything here at the end, if there's anything that I missed.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for the history of anti-APIDA, but I want to add more to that. So the Chinese massacre of 1871 in LA, 19 people were killed and 17 people were lynched. That actually is the largest lynching event in the US, okay? The San Francisco outbreak of the bubonic plague that was blamed on the Chinese, ironically, that plague actually started in a ship from Australia. So that's another misaligned fault there. In 1930, in Susanville, California, near Stockton, there was a Filipino man who actually was a veteran. He was lynched because he was associated with a white woman, all right? And then the thing about the Vincent Chin attack that I want to add to this, which is outrageous, is that he was killed by a baseball bat, and the judge gave the two men who killed him a $3,000 fine. That is ridiculous. So.
Thank you for adding to that. So, and then we'll probably go back to some of the misconceptions and myths that drive some of these actions. But next up on the agenda, and this now is your opportunity to have a conversation. This segment will be led by Professor Mickey Hong, who's the chair of our modern language program, with the assistance of Professor Anna Le from Life Science and Professor Aaron Horton from the music department. So they will be leading us in a conversation about the current attacks through personal testimonies.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We have a really great turnout today. This part of the program, we invite you to share some negative experiences you encountered as a PIDA, especially if it was recent. This is your chance to vent and let it all out, okay? Experiences can be just blatant attacks, or don't you love, these are my favorite, the really ultra subtle microaggressions that fills you with confusion. Like you're going, did I even really hear that, right? So there's no shame in speaking up. What happened to you that made you feel terrible, it's not your fault, okay? You're not the only one who's going through it. That's why we want to find common grounds and share experiences of what happened to us. To tell us, tell the world, because we're here to listen, we are here to support and stand by you and say what you went through is not okay, okay? We will not just sit back and take it. This is your chance. Your testimony will be defining the rule of what is not allowed, okay? So can we have some volunteers, to brave souls, to tell us, any injustice or hurtful things that has happened to them? To raise your hand or undo your mic to speak up.
I can start, Mickey, if need be.
Sure.
So I'm going to talk about something that happened recently, but it wasn't against me specifically. There's a student who is part of the community garden project that I'm involved in. She took the bus to come over, and this is just this last Tuesday. and her face was swollen. I said, what happened? Apparently, she was sucker punched as she was leaving the bus. And so this attack is still happening around us. And this is happening to students. So faculty isn't just the people that we want to talk about, but also our students as well.
Sure, cases like that, we need to report it, you know, just like with any incident of like domestic violence, if we were to know. So that needs to be reported right away. And that's how you get the student. A lot of the times the victims are reluctant to even talk about it because they're so scared of the consequences and retaliation. But that needs to be known. You know, again, this is fearing how, maybe I cannot take the bus today, or I'm going to run really quickly from the bus stop to the campus or home, wherever I'm going. So it is, the fear is real. Thank you.
Bernadette here. It's what I'm going to relate to you is it's a more subtle form of racism, but that I experienced, not me personally, but when I was in the presence of two of my colleagues. This is probably about 30 years ago already. And one colleague was Lily Yamaoka. I don't know if all of you remember her. She used to work in the health department, right? She was a faculty member in the health department. And the other member was Barbara Ching, who taught in the business department. The three of us were out together, and I forgot where exactly we were, but somebody was commented on our English. You know, when people comment on how well I speak English, I thank them, genuinely thank them, and feel very proud, because I'm a relatively new immigrant who did not grow up here, whose first language was, English is my fifth language. So it makes me feel really good. But I was infuriated for my colleagues. Lillian Yamaoka is probably a third generation, fourth generation Japanese American. She doesn't speak Japanese, but they were asking, telling her how well she speaks English and what language she spoke, and they asked the same of Barbara Ching. And to me, that was a big insult. Would they ever ask a white European American who may not even be an American, right? Who may be just a visitor or a tourist here, would they ever approach them and comment on their English or ask them, where they're from? They wouldn't. And I have always felt that, but recently, last week, after the incident that happened, some of the journalists, the Korean American journalists and Chinese American journalists talked about their experiences being attacked, right? People told them to go back to China, go back to the country, and also mentioned that, ask them if they speak another language. They asked one Korean American journalist if she spoke a different language, and she said yes. And they said, well, what language do you speak? She said, I speak Spanish. Well, she probably does speak Spanish, but she's American, and she, I don't know which generation she's been here. And she was, she mentioned that she didn't feel, it feels very bad to be excluded, to not be integrated in this society. We know that all the population here are immigrants anyway, right? From different countries. Why should we be kind of, brush out and not be part of the American population. I know that some of the even, you know, colleagues among us, right, who may not treat the Asian people as part of the part of their community completely, right? That
Yeah.
as Americans, they don't. I personally have not experienced that, but I've seen it.
Anyone else want to jump in and agree, had experiences like that? Because, you know, for example, it's very true. We, to give you an example of my department, we teach languages, but it's, you might, so they have this imprint where they associate the language with the kind of person that would teach that type of language, right? And, you know, we talked about it at the event yesterday about there being a mandatory training. You know, these stereotypes we have of people, they're very, very strong. We associate certain things with certain customs, certain patterns, and we need to kind of deprogram them. And I think that's really important. That's one of the things we are talking about as overall campus, that we need cultural sensitivity training, and not to associate, you know, a lot of the times we don't even think about it. And we think about our, you know, this really deep ingrained, what is it, stereotypes. It might not be a Japanese person who's teaching Japanese. It might not be a person of Latin American or Spanish country descent who is teaching Spanish. And we have to, you know, this part is so important that we have to realize that the world is much more wider and global now. Yes.
So I'd like to share something that is very relatable to the current events, even though it wasn't an attack. And when you were talking about the overt versus the more subtle stuff. So I think it wasn't last week, maybe it was the week before. My kid wanted to, you know, buy lunch. So I drove to this place, it's a neighborhood place. We have never been inside. We've only seen it from the outside, and we've got carry out, but we never go in. So we decided to go in and get some crepe. And we walked in, and it's kind of one of these restaurant bar-like place, which I kind of wish I knew. Anyway, 3 men sitting there. They didn't do anything that could be construed as direct. But what they did was just kind of really like stare at us very, you know, like nonstop stare, basically. And it was very tense inside. While we wait for our food, we order and we had to wait for it. And I have to say, maybe it's the recent attack that's caused me to feel it this way. Maybe 6 months ago, or maybe 3 years ago, I wouldn't feel it this way. I don't know. But I can tell you, standing in there with my kid, felt very tense and very uneasy. And your heart just keeps thumping the whole time. And on top, I'm thinking, my gosh, I'm in OC. I'm in, you know, like, I maybe I should wait outside, maybe I should. But then the other part of me was like, no, I'm not going to wait outside. I'm going to wait here and stand my ground. So there's all these conflicting feelings, and at the same time worried that am I putting my kids in danger? So, you know, these are direct results, even though I wasn't sure if the actions were direct or not. But the fact is, why did you have to stop everything and just like stare at us? Like, it's a form of intimidation, right? So, and I think there's a lot of that subtlety that happens that under normal circumstance, when the restaurant is really full, maybe I wouldn't have noticed it, but because in today's, you know, COVID time, I notice it. So those are little things like that, you know, and I'm sure the rest of you, you know, for the rest of the AAPI groups, if you have the same kind of stuff, because I can tell you now, every day when I leave the house to go to school, I tell them, do not go out. If you go out, be very careful, look left, look right, look across the street, like nonstop telling them to keep an eye out, because you see all these videos of people just charging up to you and knocking you down. So that's my example.
Susan has her hand up. Susan Niemeyer from English.
Yes, I want to share an experience. It was very painful, difficult experience. It happened I'm thinking 2 or 3 years ago, about 2.5 years ago in Torrance. I live in West Torrance, and my neighborhood is very mixed, white and Asian. If you go down the neighborhood, the houses, you'll find white families, but Chinese American families, Korean American families, Japanese American families. Our schools are majority minority, heavily populated with Asians, East Asians. Also, we have a very large number of people from India, where the families that come over, the husbands usually are tech workers. So about 2.5 years ago, it's right before, it was July 2nd, I was walking my dog in the afternoon and I heard some shouting, and there was there's a wall, there's kind of like a gated condo area. And on my side, there was a white boy who was probably maybe 11, 12 years old. And on the other side of the wall, there was kind of a gate and a wall, was a father, Asian American father, with his son, who was probably about 8 or 9, who was wearing a little league outfits and so forth. And the white kid on my side was yelling, Trump pussy, Asian eyes, Trump pussy, Asian eyes, loudly over and over again. And the father on the other side, he was just, he was just really, and he was yelling back, and I'm not sure what he was saying, but it was just kind of a tense situation. Luckily, we had the wall and the gate, so they were physically apart. And I come by with my dog, and the boy starts shouting to me. He says, call the police, call the police. And I'm like, what for, And it was very tense. And I hope that the Asian American father, I kind of said to him, just because he was an adult and this was a child, that was taunting him. I was just like, I kind of encouraged him, just separate from this, because it was just not going to end too well with that. And then, so he left with his child, and the boy circled around. He was riding a scooter. He circled around to me, and he said, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? I don't know what derogatory term he used. And I'm like, you're talking to the wrong person here, because my husband is Korean. He was raised in Korea, educated in Korea. And so I started talking to this kid. I wanted to engage him and say, like, look, this is not our land. Our white skin doesn't make us entitled to this land. And I said, my husband is Korean. My son is Korean American, biracial. And when you're taunting this family, you are taunting my family. And the boy was a little bit surprised by that. I was trying to engage him and get him to open his eyes a little bit. And then he said to me, you think I'm an asshole? And I said, no, I don't think you are an asshole. I'm not calling, and I didn't use that term, he did. And I said, I don't think you are, but I think your behavior, you are acting. And I was kind of blunt, you are acting like one. And I kind of, was saying, think about how you are presenting think about yourself and how you are presenting yourself. And this is so, and I was trying to kind of break through and at least have some, but the mindset that he had was so deeply ingrained, and he was maybe 11 years old. And I ended up walking away with my dog after a few minutes, but then I heard he still was shouting over the wall at this man and his son. It was still ongoing, and I thought, it was just terrible. It was horrific. I kind of walked into this scene, and what, this child must have been raised by his family to have these attitudes. And he's in a school where it's a majority minority school. His classmates are all, mostly Asian American students. So that was the story.
Thank you for sharing, Susan. I wanted to share something too, as well, if that's okay. It wasn't recent, but it was before this pandemic. So I want to basically say that, like, these attacks, obviously, we all know has happened before this pandemic. And my own mother-in-law was hit and robbed. And so ever since then, like, even before this pandemic, she doesn't carry her wallet with her. She just carries the exact cash she needs. And she doesn't even take her cell phone with her because she's afraid someone will take her cell phone, which I told her is not a smart idea. You still need your cell phone just in case you need to call somebody, like the police. And then pretty soon after that, again, still pre-pandemic, my aunt, while she was coming over to my parents' house, was pistol whipped and her purse was stolen. And so, hearing about all this stuff in the news has been kind of scary, because I also have my mom who's still alive. My dad passed away pretty recently, but my mother's health has been deteriorating. She's very weak. She's normally like about 120 pounds, but she's now like 90 pounds. So if somebody were to attack her, for sure she'll die. For sure she'll die. So it's frustrating to hear about all this. And anyways, I just wanted to mention, or I wanted to open this up to other people too, because I rarely have opportunities to speak up, and I know I want to create space for everybody else to speak up as well.
I think thank you for that, both Susan and Anna. We're very frustrated, and this helps us, kind of realize how, upsetting the situation all is, and we're all humans, the acts against us is, to kind of, like Susan shared with us, to have this label on us, but we're like really breathing, bleeding human beings. So, thank you for sharing. Anyone else who would like to share their experience, please.
My name's Kevin Brown, and I wanted to share. I'm fairly new to LACC. Black folks have always had to recognize that the promise of the American melting pot, of being able to change your last name and your children will just be considered Americans, was never really true for people with skin color brown or dark. And that's always been this exception when I think of other people in our culture, has been folks of Asian and Pacific Island descent, is that no matter how much we talk about a melting pot in America, it only goes so far. And if you can change your last name, then your children can have that experience. So when you're experiencing the look, and when you told that story about those men looking at you, everybody Black in America knows that look, knows that feeling of not being welcomed. And of course, it's nothing said or done that is the nature of the intimidation of racism. It is a look or a sigh or a roll of the eyes. So the only thing I can think of as folks are experiencing these horrible attacks recently, which have always been there, is look to Black history and how Black folks have had to deal with racism for years and years. For any kind of strategies that might help or work, or just talking about it, is one of the things that Black folks have had to do for years. It's just to make sure you're not crazy. That person just looked at us that way. Yes, that happened. There's something very helpful in sharing that. So I can't say enough of how it's disturbing to see. It's as though there's a hatred in America that just needs to be focused at different people at different times. And unfortunately, it's folks of Asian and Pacific Island descent. And so, there's a term that's used often in the Black community, which is, I feel you. I feel you. I know exactly what you're going through. And the fear and the intimidation, stay strong, lean on people that are your friends. We're here for you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And that's why we need to all stand together. Thank you for the support. And that's what we realize. We have to all stand together otherwise safety in numbers, and we cannot be ignored. We cannot be ignored. And Dr. V, same thing. I'm very outspoken as a petite Asian woman. If anybody stare like that at any time, I would be like, what you looking at? I'm very confronted with things like that. But now it's very mixed feelings, because it's very internal struggle, because you're like, am I, is it worth it? Is it worth getting hurt, getting punched in my face, or possibly dying, right? The worst case scenario. So, but then inside, you don't want to retreat back. There's a fighter in you. So you're like, what to do now? So it's a lot of mixed feelings. Joseph, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, this is not, I was there, and this actually deals with a friend of mine, and this guy was actually I was with my friend, and his father's an immigrant, I think from Ghana, and he was Black. And I know exactly what the previous person was talking about, because we were in Santa Monica on the promenade, and there was this white guy who just out of nowhere started staring at my dad's friend, my friend's, my father's, or excuse me, my friend's father, and he was Black. And the guy started getting very aggressive with the look, like you said, and then it became physically violent. He literally punched him in the face, and everyone was just in utter shock. I was in utter shock. And the worst thing that I remember feeling was that could be, that happens to my friend, and it could happen to anybody, right? I know exactly what that feels. I wasn't even the one who got punched, but I felt like I did, right? It was a gut-wrenching experience. And I'll never forget that the policeman who came, he said, well, why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you do something? And I think that one of the problems is like many of you said, you feel nervous. You feel like, I'm not sure if I should do something. You should definitely stand your ground, as many of you are doing. So I want to say that I've seen it firsthand. And for me, it was one of the most eye-opening experiences to blatant racism within this country. And it's a big problem. And I know it's been happening to Asian and Asian American students and the population. So I just want to say I support all of you, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Vera, you had your hand up.
Hi, everybody. Nice seeing everybody. It saddens me because I live in Koreatown, and I've been living here 30 years. I am north of Melrose, so I'm just like maybe 2.5 miles away from City College. I remember this community really suffering with the riots, so I watched things be burned to the ground. There are many, many wonderful restaurants in this area. North of City College is Thai Town. Where I live, mid-Wilshire, is Koreatown, and east of Vermont towards Beverly is Filipino Town. So we have 3 Asian, and then with Chinatown beyond Filipino Town downtown, we have 3 that are close to us. A suggestion, I live near Western and Oakwood with the largest Korean church. It's the Oriental Mission Church. It's the largest in Koreatown. Dr. Moon Chung and I used to be on one of the boards in the community, and we used to have community outreach meetings here in the area in a Korean church. And unfortunately, Reverend Kim passed away a couple of years ago, who lived on the other side of City College. We used to have meetings, and I've lost contact with him, but it might be a way to reach out to this Oriental Mission Church, maybe invite them back to one of the next town meetings. I've had the opportunity to actually go to one of their Sunday churches with people in the community, which it wasn't in English, it was all in Korean, but I understood what they were talking about. One of our teenagers got a scholarship from them. So I'm only bringing that to everybody's attention because you might not live in this area to know how it's all been laid out here, but there are terrific restaurants. Matter of fact, on Melrose and Normandy, and I know Pam is here. Atkinson's, we used to go to lunch and have their papaya salad, and it's right over there next to the gas station. It's an outstanding papaya salad. You're not going to find it anywhere else but that place. And to reach out to this Oriental Mission Church, they used to use our parking lot for civic permits. So there might be an idea to reach out, maybe that church to maybe join us for a town hall meeting to see maybe how they can help us and we can help them. And I'm surprised that we don't have more students because we're just down the street from everybody. There should be more students enrolled here. And why aren't they? Maybe we're not reaching out. You know, maybe we're not having it in the different languages. Maybe we're not advertising in the Korean newspaper, or I don't know if that's the proper word, Asian newspaper, or whatever that newspaper is. I forgot the name. But and on a flip side, when I moved here 30 years ago from up north from Hollywood, this area was primarily white. So I grew up with a lot of stores here in Koreatown. And when I walked in, I had the opposite of what happened to you. When I walked in, they looked at me and said, "What do you want?" Because I'm white and they're Korean. And I thought, well, wait a minute, I went to the store when I was a kid. The manager actually came out and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "No problem," because I already knew why they did that, because they've already been treated bad. So not all whites are bad, but because they got treated bad. When I walked into the store, they gave that reaction, like, "What do you want doing here?" Well, I've been shopping here for years, and they own the store. They apologized. I have no problem with it. And when you go into the store, you know, they bow to you. And in the laundromat, when I go, they bow to me. So I bow back because that's part of their culture. And older people are called elders. I don't know if they still use that term. But just to let you know, I live in Koreatown and a lot of people are not going outside, they're scared. So just an idea maybe to reach out to the Oriental Mission Church. Maybe they can come have a speaker, and maybe there's ways for them to advertise at their church, which is probably virtual now, to maybe enroll in some of our classes. So it's just
That's a great idea, Vera.
So may I jump in here? I know everybody needs to voice their stuff, but I just want to address something very quickly, Vera. And thank you for saying that. So, and then to everybody else too. So there's the concern and the worry, but there's a huge part of me, and actually I'm surprised at how calm I am today. Because I have a note here say, "Stay calm," but I'm angry. So beyond worry and concern, I am, for lack of a better word, extremely pissed off. So I'm bringing this up, even though I'm trying to be calm, like for other people that feel like you don't have to be polite about this. This is a safe place to have an honest conversation. Because I am pissed that I saw our chancellor write that note only a few days ago. I am pissed that everyone is acknowledging this only after 6 people have died. I'm pissed that when a bunch of old people getting spit on, smacked, punched, pushed, nobody say anything. For God's sake, that could have been your grandma. That could have been your mother or your father. I don't hear anybody saying anything until people die. So for me, that really, really pissed me off, including us having this conversation. We should have had this conversation a long time ago. So I also want to bring that up. And then to be honest with you, the first thought that came to my mind, Vera, when you say, you know, we have all these Korean students, we have all these families in our neighborhood that are not coming here. I'm going to be really honest with you. I heard, because I have parents who have friends in the area and all that, and I have friends in the area. You know why people don't go to LACCD? We don't feel welcome. Asians do not want to go to LACCD because the message is loud and clear. You are not wanted. So I am just throwing that out there to you. So
that's not, as long as I've been here at City College and as a student, I've been here like 40 something years at City. It's always been such a melting pot of different people and culture. So where did this come into? Because I grew up in all different multicultural neighborhoods, schools, which I've been honored by that because I've tried everybody's food. I've been into everybody's house, everybody's custom.
Vera, I think I can maybe speak to this really quick. For the most part, I think our culture, we're lucky we're in Los Angeles, that we don't feel maybe as much of the racism and hatred. What happens is the microaggressions. That does happen on our campus. This was just a few years ago where another faculty member, was a white male, who looked at me and was like, "Hey, you don't have an accent." And am I supposed to? Like, what does that mean? So it's not that we're saying, you know, allies aren't doing anything, or we could do better, right? We are lucky where we are, but we damn well can do better. And Mickey, if you can.
Sure, I could share some of my own stories. I'll tell you that. Even as you know, a woman who's a chair of a department, I face it a lot. A lot of people who are uncomfortable with women in authority. That's what I felt. You know, there's so many times where I'm like, would I have been treated this way? Would I have been questioned this way if I was a white male? And definitely, like, because it's just unimaginable, right? And I'll be honest with you. It was at the beginning of this semester. Bookstore was having a lot of problem, and you know, because the bookstore, they're trying to figure things out as far as if I get any notice about books, I was to refer them to the professors, because they might have a sample first chapter or so. And even in a simple directive like that, don't forget, like colleagues, even students, I had problems where they're like, your last name is Hong, you might not speak English. And actually, English is not my, you know, a native tongue. Actually, I was a ESL student, and you know, it was 8 when I came to the States, and I had to learn English like anybody else. And that's sort of a selling point for students who are learning my, you know, native language, that, you know, if you try, and if you know, if there's enough time, you will lose the accent. You'll be able to do that all you want to, but it's really the subtle things that really get you going. You know, it accumulates. That's what it is. All the little trickle downs, that's what make you so angry at the end, because you're, you know, it's sort of like, you know, that's another big issue we haven't kind of discussed, the idea of the Asians as the model minority, right? With women being subservient. I even talked about this with V. And as an Asian woman, like, it's very confusing, because how they perceive you as is being either really docile and passive. And then if you're too, you know, if you want to break that stereotype, then you're the big B word, right? You're like the dragon queen, you're the tiger, you're like that typical Asian B capital bitch, right? So we're always going back and forth, trying to like, before we say anything, we do anything, you know, like, what are they going to think about us? You know, where do we fit into the spectrum? And that's been, you know, it's, I could be doing other constructive things, but that's politically some of the things that I have to face every day. Not only as a leader of my department, which houses 8 departments, and they all have different cultural backgrounds and aspects of like gender roles and stuff like that, but that's constant in my mind.
Okay, so I'm gonna usher you guys along because you have 5 more minutes for this segment. So sorry,
I'd love
Mickey.
to hear more from the PETA.
Yes. So how about Sean? I think your hand was up, right?
Before Sean speaks, I just want to say this. If those of you who are allies, we'd love to hear from you, but since we don't have that much time, please allow the API community to speak up.
All right. So I think we appreciate the microaggression that most of us, if not all of us, have experienced. But to me, the reason why we're here is the fact that there's physical violence against people like me. So I could tolerate, if I need to, the microaggression, even though that shouldn't be the case. But the fact that their lives, there's physicality that's being affected. So don't forget that. And I'm going to address that later on as well, just so you know.
So I really, really want to open this up for people who don't normally
somebody's
speak
hand
up.
up.
Has her hand up.
Oh, Kaya.
Hi guys. My name is Kaya Lagin. I'm from Ideas Club, and I'm with the RC team, Carolina and Victor. So my experience as is different. So a lot of people, they don't understand my words, especially when I speak in English. Some people, they don't know how I speak in English. There's some people, they saying, oh, you don't know how to speak in English. But I have one experience That was recently, that was last year. And I had one professor, is a staff in different school. And I remember I'm one of the member and vice president, and I'm only one Asian I'm only one Asian who is handling the the club. So I tell Victor about what happened, and the guy, he really obsessed to me. He likes me, but the problem is, I reject this guy. But later, he started harassing me by email, and I feel uncomfortable now. So I direct to talk to ASU in other school, but they direct me to PCLA. So I talked to one of the Titan I coordinator, and she said, when was it happened? I said, this was happens on fall semester. He started following me on Instagram. He started me like being obsessed on me. I try everything to avoid this guy because I not feel comfortable because in a way how he thinks. Then later on, he texted me like, panda or stuff like that. Then by later, he's saying that you disrespectful. He's saying that you're not having a disability rights, or any kind of disrespectful against me, and they doesn't like me. Whole group is a one group that doesn't like me because I am only one Asian working on that group back in Valley. That was Valley College, and I tried to talk to an ASU, but they just ignored me. Then recently, it was in a club day. They just ignoring me, nothing to talk to me. No one's wanna ask me, how are you, or nothing, because this guy brainwashed anyone on the valley because no one's gonna talk to me. They get hated me in a way how I speak, in a way how I speak. I'm not speaking Tagalog, but in a way how I speak, they're not gonna understand me. Because even I come in Philippines and I come here in America, they definitely hated the words. Even you're Chinese, even you are Korean or Thai, they're not gonna understand you because it's the the accent that we have. Because I have an accent to learn the English. I went to Professor Chen. I remember Professor Chen. I love Professor Chen. I respect Professor Chen. She's very nice person. I love her. I miss her too, and I miss the English department for 3 years already. I've been there in English department for 3 years, and I have nothing happen over there. Professor Chen is the one my grandma. I remember that long time ago. She's Tommy there, Kaya, and she talked to me. Yeah, she's very kind person. I love her. So thank you so much to allow me to speak.
Kaya, it's not to, it doesn't matter. Even if you don't have an accent, even if they still see your last name, they will ask you, do you speak English? I encounter that. So it's their mentality. You have nothing to be ashamed of. And I made a little sarcastic joke yesterday too. When somebody has like a British accent or a French accent or Italian accent, that's always like a plus, right? That's like so exotic, but in a positive way, not like trying to cut down your intelligence. But then Asian accent is supposed to be something very negative, right?
Yeah, there's some people that I was in a different school. This is a Valley College. I went to the different school, and I'm only one person. I'm only one person, and I have one instructor. She was in LACC too. She also teach Valley College, but she comes to LACC to teach math. She appreciated me, and she said, Kaya, you can have a double time for your test, and she's understand about what happened to the books. But what happened recently, it was on fall, it was now okay. I was not feeling okay. I could not attend on the Zoom meetings. I had to change my pictures. And even my Instagram, I cannot either use my Instagram
Yeah.
because it's obsession. So what I do is to leave that group
Kaya,
because it's negative.
yeah, Kaya, thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna move along. Come back
No
when we have the
problem.
next forum and share some more. The next time we have another forum, okay? So I'm gonna move
Just
to
no problem. Thank you so much, Professor. I really love you, Professor, especially Professor Chen.
Okay.
Sis.
Okay, so we are going to move on to the next segment, which is really, we want to kind of, and again, I apologize for each segment being so short. So the next one, we really want to talk about, kind of address a lot of the myths and misconceptions that lead to a lot of unfortunate incidents. And this segment is led by Professor Sean Parmasasi from Life Science Department with the help of Keika Stevenson from Counseling and Julie Washinik from Red Tech Department. So Sean, take it away. You are on mute.
I'm sorry. So Julie, can you just jump in whenever you feel the need to? I'm going to share my screen with you. I actually create a PowerPoint presentation for this. So let me do that. All right. So can everyone see?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, you know, I think that a lot of what's happening to the APIDA community comes from the misinformation that people are getting. And so I want to basically hopefully inform you that most of the what you're hearing about us absolutely is not true. So feel free to ask questions as I go along. All right. So first thing, oops, sorry, there you go. So first thing is the idea that Asians are not discriminated against. Well, obviously history have shown us that we have, and the past 14 months says otherwise. So I think that most of us, if not all of us, could agree that this happens, right? So the other thing that is a little misinformed as well is that a lot of the past laws that were targeted at African Americans were also targeted at, quote, other people of color. Some of you might know or be aware of certain cities, right, that African Americans and Asians and another group weren't even allowed to live in it. For example, Glendale had a law that restricted people of color from living in the city, which is, you know, crazy. So a lot of cities had this policy known as the racial restrictive covenant rule, which basically says that homeowners, renters, developers, real estate agent, everyone involved, they have to agree to rent or sell their property to someone who isn't white. So that's something that applies to us as well as APIDA members. And so I just want you all to know that we also are impacted by these discriminatory laws. All right. Asians don't speak up. Well, you know what? Some of us do, and some of us do not. But as Mickey Hong says, that if we do, we are given derogatory names, right? We're called Dragon Lady, we're called Tiger Mom, we're called these other names. So what do we do? So keep that in mind if you wonder why sometimes we don't speak up. For those of you who are a little more vocal, please help us, speak up for us. Don't just wait for us to always start the conversation. All right. So the other misconception about Asian Americans or APIDA group is that, you know, we arrive in the US already well ahead. That is absolutely untrue. Yes, there might be some with tech degree that come recently and now they're living the middle class life. But you know what? Most of us are not here, did not come here with all of what we have today. So just to give you some statistics, for example, right? 13% of APIDA live under the federal poverty level. Okay, that's pretty high. All right. Now, if you were then to look at the different groups of APIDA, there is a huge difference or gap between those who are living under the federal poverty level and not. For example, as much as 39% of APIDA groups could be living under the federal poverty level, whereas the lowest would be 6.8%. So this idea that we are given an advantage or are we're ahead is absolutely wrong. I could tell you my own personal stories, and I'm sure some people have their own stories, okay? As a kid growing up, my parents work at sweatshops. I actually had to go in the summer month, help them to basically do whatever has to be done until I was old enough, which is 12, to actually start saying, I don't want to do that. So again, please, not all of us, as a matter of fact, most of us do not have the kind of resources that the media portrays us to have. All right. So the other thing that is problematic is that, you know, a lot of people say, why don't we ask for help? Well, most Asians don't have the language skills to even ask for help, let alone the resources that are out there are actually typically targeted at other groups, which is great, but it needs to be more inclusive for the APITA community as well. So, all right, so Asians are all the same. Yeah, even though there are over 50 different nationalities, we're still categorized as Chinese, Japanese, or Koreans, all right? And that also is a problem because we are not a monolithic group. We are linguistically different. I can't communicate with someone in Thai or Laotian who's not, and I don't even speak that language that well. Culturally, we're different. Socioeconomically, we're different, right? Those differences are great culturally. However, they also makes it difficult for our community to be cohesive because of the, you know, diverse in linguistic and socioeconomics. And so putting us into one group is not at all fair, all right? So we need, again, our friends, our allies to advocate for us. All right, make sure I didn't skip anything there. So, you know, another guilt that I think a lot of Asians or APITA people feel is that, you know, most of us are recent immigrants, right? And so we, even though we have discrimination against us and we are oppressed, there is this guilt that we should be in the back of the line and wait our turn, wait till the other groups get their quote share of the pie. Well, first of all, is true equality, does that require that those who are oppressed go and wait their turn? So think about that. And there are a lot of APITA members who actually second, third, or fourth generation. So assuming that we're all recent arrivals or what they call FOB, that is racial profiling. All right. So Asians are more foreign, strange, and culturally different from other groups. No, we're not. We're more like everyone else than you actually know. Okay. So this idea that Asians are really culturally different and strange is perpetrated, you know, by the media. But you should ask yourself, what do you do that actually perpetuates this idea? So, for example, you know, they use our food, they use our culture, you know, the media, right? Use it to make a statement of shock that, oh my God, this is so weird, this is so unusual. Well, that to me is somewhat racist, if not, you know, racist. And so if you do that, if you basically see Asian food and you make a face, what does that say to someone who might be Asian? All right. So this one is a little sensitive, but I'm going to be honest and just talk about it. Asians are racist against other groups. Yes, there are a small number of APITA who may be racist, right? But that's true for all other groups. And so I think that the other groups of color, African Americans, Hispanic, right? Because if you look at the media and the recent attacks, it's actually not just Caucasians that are attacking Asians, it's actually other minority What is wrong with that? What's going on? Why is it that a minority is attacking another minority? That's the question that I would like maybe those people that represent those groups to also discuss. And I think part of that is probably the misinformation that I am basically going over with you here. All right. So we can talk about that some more. I know that there isn't enough time, so I'm just going to move on. The other perception of perhaps why Asians are racist is that, you know, my mom, she doesn't speak English that well, so she tends to be very shy and she seems to be very standoffish. Well, a lot of times, someone that an Asian person that you think is racist, they're just shy and they just don't really know what to do. They're intimidated. And so that is perceived as being racist. Right? Asians are only book smart, but not creative or artistic. This is also completely bullshit. All right. So, like any group of people, there are some who are academically inclined and others who are more artistically inclined. Okay. Just like any group. But here's perhaps one reason why maybe academically Asians do perhaps a little better than other group. We all know that our Asian parents are not sometimes the most supportive. So if the messaging that you get from your parents is that we love you if you do this, if you're successful, if you go to law school, if you go to become a doctor, if that is the message you're getting from your parents, then perhaps being academically successful is the only way that you know what to do, right? So anyway, the other issue I have with, you know, pigeonhole us into just this book smart group is that it limits perhaps those who might be more artistic inclined, who might actually want to go into other fields. But because we now are just seen as book smart, then perhaps, you know, any other inclination we may have are basically upended at that moment because of that. And we see this in the betrayal of Asian Americans in Hollywood. I'm so tired of seeing commercials, the few commercials or the few anything that has an Asian face. And typically it has to do with being smart or it has to do with gambling. Why can't we be the people that is serving Starbucks? Why can't we be the person that hemorrhoids commercials are targeted at? We're not. So why is that? Okay. Asians are unclean and spread diseases. Another complete bullshit. All right. So as I alluded to, the bubonic plague that hit San Francisco in the 1900s, that is not because of Chinese. That is most likely Australian. All right. There is a disease called the Chinese liver fluke. Right. How do you name a disease after an entire group of people? You don't hear American fluke disease. No. So naming things are actually an issue for the spread of, I believe, anti-Asian hate as well. I'll give you an example. You know, there's another disease known as the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. This is a problem because there have been attacks against people of that part of the world because of this stupid name. You know, we don't call Ebola the African disease because it's just stupid and racist. And so we need to, again, make sure that when we attribute certain things to people that we don't inadvertently allow it to be used against them. So that's food for thought there for you. All right. Another thing that I'm quite frustrated by is that, you know, my background is Laotian and Thai. And the first person who is not Thai or Asian, even some other Asians do this, right? Is that when I say, oh, I'm Thai, I love Thai food. Well, I'm more than the food that you like. I'm a whole person. So I'm great. It's great that you like Thai food, but perhaps you should try to engage someone first by knowing who they are rather than just attributing the food dish to that person. So that's something that I also think that you all should know. All right. So Growing up with a long last name, you know my last name, okay? I shudder, my heart leaps whenever a teacher gets to my name during roll call. Okay, I felt embarrassed with my name. I'm no longer feeling that way. So, instructors, all of you, make an attempt to learn to pronounce the birth name of everybody, even if it's hard. I make an effort to understand how to say it. If that person wants to be called a different name, that's fine, but make the effort. All right, moving on. So the other frustrations that the APID community feels is that we feel excluded from a lot of the social justice and the equality issues and discussion, even though they might have maybe the wording minority or people of color. Somehow we feel not included, and to me, it's not us; it's the messaging. So I think that has to change, is the messaging of who is included and who's not. All right. And so we need better representation as well. We need to have more APIDA faces at all levels, especially in positions of power, because I've been at LACC for at least 15 years, and yet I rarely see anyone that I feel like I can say, oh, okay, maybe one day I could do that. I feel like for the APIDA community, there's a glass ceiling that isn't discussed. Okay, just to make even more of an issue, like I said, people like me are not seen in the media. We're not seeing that we are real people. There's no commercials that is directed at us for the most part. Now, at the local level, I'm talking about our school and our district. When I look at flyers, right, about LACC or LACCD, I rarely see the kind of diversity that I see at LACC. I don't see that level of diversity. For example, the catalog that is now online, right? It shows 6 students. I'm not sure if they're real students, right? Well, I'm sorry. The models or students that I see there don't represent what I see and do not represent the APIDA community as well. That to me says, all right, maybe APIDA students don't matter. And so we're talking about why Asians feel like they are not wanted. And that might be one reason why. All right. So I'm going to end it there for now. I do have more to say in case you don't know that. So Jeff, I will let you then take the next step, and then I will jump in if I feel like I need to.
Well, actually, I'm going to interrupt you there. Before Jeff goes on, Sean, could you share the screen first? I think Julie and Keika, could you guys jump in here and kind of continue where Sean left off on the misconceptions and myths? And then perhaps we have a little dialogue on that first before I turn it over to Jeff.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Sean, so much for the information, and thanks everyone for being here today. I think I just wanted to touch upon one of the myths about the Asian APIDA community, which is that we are so different from the rest of the communities. I just want to say that historically, the white America and the institutions have made constant efforts in really magnifying the differences among different peoples of color. And I think it was really intentional because they wanted to promote divide, including rivalry. And we were often pitted against each other. And it is really, if you think about it, who's really benefiting from this system? It's not us. It's not the other groups of the minority groups, but it is the people who hold the power, because they want us to be separated. They want us to focus and accentuate the differences more so than the similarities. And this really makes me emotional because it is very, personal to me. I am Asian immigrant, first generation, and my husband is African American, and I have a daughter who is half Black and half Asian. And it is truly heartening to see the divide in the communities of people of color, because this is really not the time for us to play the myth, go along with the myth that we are so different, that we cannot unite. Even if we may say something nice to each other on the surface, we do not like each other. And that cannot continue, because we really have to unite and fight against the root cause, and thinking about the future that we are going to give to the next generations, younger generations, especially thinking about my biracial daughter. This is very disheartening that on the news, we see some of the incidents where the assailants are the people of color against Asians. And I think it is time to realize that this is not helping nobody, but we know who or what. And we have to really move forward together as a united group. So that's what I wanted to just mention.
Agree.
You, Julie?
Yeah, I just want to share my perspective. It may not be other Filipinos' perspective, but I don't fit in the mold of what a typical other Filipino might think I look like. I get a lot of racism and insensitive comments, throughout my life, even from Asians. And, I get it from different ethnicities. Like, oh, you look Chinese, but I'm not. And okay, is that such a bad thing? Like, why point out something and make it sound like it's a flaw in somebody, right? And so then you start thinking you're self-conscious, like, how am I different? Why am I so different? And it's, so we can't always assume from what we perceive, right? We sometimes fit in more than one box. And, like for my nieces, she's half Puerto Rican, and, she looks more Asian and people call her chink, right, in the streets. And my nephew's half Dominican. He looks more African-American, but people in South Carolina have no idea where Dominican Republic is. I mean, it scares me that this day and age in the United States, we are at this point, and things have to change. I think there has to be more cultural sensitivity, but more importantly, cultural humility. We need to do a lot of self-reflection. Where are we at? What are we doing? How are we contributing to this?
Julie, I often hear from Filipino people that I am Filipina, that I look Filipina, and that's doesn't hurt me, doesn't do me anything. I just think, well, we do look alike. We can't tell. I can't tell, one Asian from another where they're from. So if they say I'm Filipina, I say, well, I do have Filipino relatives, nieces and sisters-in-law and brothers-in-law who are Filipino. So yeah, it's neither a compliment nor an insult. I don't take it this way.
No,
I have to teach my students who, or first teach people in my community to say people who speak Spanish are not all Mexicans. But then my Latino students have to learn from me when I tell them, sí, soy una chinita, but not everybody is chinita or chinito, okay? But they say it without knowing that that's an insult. So all we need to do is to point it out to them, right?
Yeah, it's the way that people say it.
Yeah,
I don't mind if somebody mistakes me, like, oh, I didn't know, maybe you're Thai, but if it's like, for even me, my own people, my Filipinos, you're Filipino? No, it's the way people say it. And it bothers me because, okay, I come to the point where I just lie sometimes. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I am Chinese, I am part Chinese, whatever you want. Because I've had that dialogue throughout my life. It's come to that point.
You know, I know this is not part of this segment, but for example, I have different master's degrees. I have a master's in English to teach English. I have a master's in teaching ESL. So I belong in the English and ESL department, and I teach both. But recently, you know, I was challenged by members of my departments, I don't know who said, well, why should I be teaching English? I don't qualify, right? I mean,
I understand, Bernadette, but I think you're missing the
point. I should be teaching ESL. 15 years ago, a part-timers just mentioned, you know, when I went to her and said, please accept this student from an English 97 class into your 101 because that's where the student belonged. But that teacher assumed that because looking at me as an Asian, I should be teaching ESL. And said, I don't take ESL.
You're absolutely right, Bernadette. You're absolutely right. It's a different conversation, and we should have that conversation. We should definitely have it.
Yeah,
I'm moving along to the next segment.
Move ahead.
Okay, so and because I'm cognizant of people's time, and I'm very appreciative, so I don't want people to run away before it ends. I'm just going to give you a really quick stats, some data on follow up on what Sean was saying about representation, because he is right. It is crucial, because I do think things start from the top if you want your whole campus to move in the right direction. And I gotta say, I gotta give Mary credit, not because she's sitting here, but it starts from the top, right? So, you know, Mary, you know, acknowledging this whole issue and opening up this forum for us is one step forward. So just so you guys know, statistically, there are approximately 5,000 colleges in in the US. Out of these 5,000 colleges, 1.5% have a college president that's of a AAPI background. That means 75. There are 75 college presidents out there that are AAPI out of 5,000 colleges. When you look at full-time faculty, tenure faculty, there are 7%. So that means Sean is right. All these faculty, you're good enough to teach in the classroom. We want your subject expertise. But guess what? You're not going to go past that. So keep that in mind. So 7% of faculty, tenure faculty, only 3% are deans, and 1.5% become college presidents. That's, you know, food for thought. So I'm moving on to the next segment, which is we're wrapping this up. So we have had this conversation. This is the beginning. The more important question is, what next? So Professor Jeff Nishimura, from who's the chair of the English department, is going to take this part, and he's going to talk about what are some of the next steps for us.
Thank you, V. You know, listening to the last segment with Sean and Julie, what it comes down to is that, you know, you go through your life and then suddenly you're sort of faced with an identity crisis. People force you to reflect upon yourself, particularly of who you are. And one thing about the AAPI umbrella is that it covers a lot of different backgrounds, people of different backgrounds. And those groups, you know, have always historically been in conflict with each other. And I think that in order to really solve this problem, it's, you know, this town hall meeting is a good start, but we definitely need many more. How many meetings do we need? 2, 20? I mean, anything to continue the conversation until everyone who's been marginalized feel hurt or threatened, feel safe. Being a person of color myself, I've experienced racism through my entire life. Advocacy of racism is almost genetic to me. My parents were interned during World War II. They lost their farm. And now the supporters of the JACL, who has to go out and tell the entire nation why a Muslim ban is wrong, right? And so you have these continual fights that if it was as easy as just saying that tolerance is bad, that would be great, but it's not. This is systemic. It's an institution. It's on institution of politics, policy, It's been indoctrinated within us by education, media. But as long as it's around, as long as people are hurt or feeling threatened, these dialogues need to continue. And people need to speak up and then shut it down, shut down the hatred as quickly as possible. So listening to this town hall, I sort of gathered a couple things that what we can do. Definitely, we need more town hall meetings until we all feel safe and comforted and see that we support these communities. Mandatory cultural responsiveness training is always good. It definitely is something that people have talked about since I started looking at the equity plan onward. We definitely should make it, we should have more of it. And if we can make it mandatory, then just like sexual harassment, we can actually make it something that's sort of instituted within our college. A safe space in the multicultural center would be fantastic too. Again, it's a large community. The PETA community is large, so it's going to have a sufficient number of space there. Someone mentioned in breakouts yesterday about adding a statement in our syllabi, giving out sources of people who might feel like they're being marginalized in a classroom or by a teacher or by the institution. We should have a statement there saying that we're not tolerating it. And these are the sources that you can go to in order to find support. And then finally, I think the most important thing is actually thinking of a work group. A work group that's dedicated to, it doesn't have to be that big, but definitely one that's dedicated to PETA issues. Other colleges have it. Grossman College has it. San Jose College has it. De Anza has it. These are groups that simply look at policy and reviews and then puts out a statement if they feel like there's some insensitivity statements that's within that. So I do think that there are a lot of things we could do. I would, again, the town halls are good. I think we should continue it until everyone feels safe and supported. I think a work group would definitely help, as well as making sure that we get statements out. There's a lot of rallies going on throughout the county. I know there's one tomorrow in Koreatown on Normandy and Olympic. So think about attending those rallies. Be careful when you do, because always with rallies, there's always anti groups that go against those rallies. But there's plenty of things that we need to get done. And it's going to take a while and a long time to do it. And people are going to get frustrated when it moves slowly. But I think that, if you feel the frustration, you realize what other people have been feeling for a very long time. Again, I've been dealing with this issue throughout my entire life. This has been a problem since March. It takes a tragedy like what happened in Atlanta to people finally come up with it. And I'm grateful to actually see that this college, of all the 9 colleges, are really actively doing something about it. So I think, Sean, you had something you wanted to say?
I would like to add to what you're saying, okay? I'm going to show you my screen back to my slide again. This is my notes, basically. So, thank you, everyone who is here. Thank you, President Gallagher, and all of the deans that are here, because this is really an issue that hit us very hard, both, professionally and personally. And so it is not, I don't want this to be just another one of those, perfunctory meeting that we go to and nothing comes out of it. So with that said, here's what I and many APIDA individuals would like to see happening. So I'm just gonna go through some of these, right? So I think that there needs to be training among the administrator, especially in our campus anyway, as well as faculty and staff about the issues that affect us. So this town hall meeting itself isn't going to change that much. And so I think that there should be some kind of workshop that is offered, and maybe with flex credit, that teaches non-APID individuals about what it is. I eventually hope that we can expand this and include other groups as well, because I'm also an LGBTQ member. And so I think that there are a lot of people who are hurt. And at this moment, it is the APIDA community that is. And so perhaps we should have workshops that helps us understand each other better and come up with policy that is more inclusive. I mentioned earlier about, names and being included. So one of the things I do, and this is something that I think would be good to teach about, is that when I have word problems, I actually use names that are Arabic, I use Armenian names, I use Asian names in my questions, so that, I grew up with Bob and Sally have 5 eggs, how many eggs they have left. Well, to me, that, even though it's a small gesture, it is a big deal for those of us who are underrepresented. So that's one thing. I think, and I hope that the administrators and the district will be more proactive and less reactive. One reason why we're angry is the fact that this only came about after the mass shooting. And my other concern is the fact that there was another shooting that happened. And my fear is that going to overtake our problems, even though anti-Asian attacks continue to be going on. But my fear was that recent massacre is now going to sideline, what we're trying to do. So again, I hope that our school, our district will be more proactive and less reactive. Okay. I hope that our school and our district will have policies, fundings, and everything else that are more explicitly inclusive of APID members, and that includes grants and scholarship. A lot of times, a lot of the programs that I see goes toward 1 or 2 groups, and typically it does not include the APIDA group. And that's something that I think, needs to be looked at as well, especially if you want to attract more of students of that background. And lastly, I would like to see more representation of APIDA individuals at both, the college administration level as well as the district, because I really don't feel that, I'm represented and that I feel like that glass ceiling is there. So that's my take on that.
Yes.
Sean. Okay, so folks, the end is coming up. Before I turn it back to Mary for closing, I just want to thank you to all the presenters and all the participants. I have something for you to walk away with. I think it might be helpful. And this is something that I said yesterday at yesterday's union meeting. You know how every one of us, or most of us, have been in interview committees, right, at our district, whether as an interviewee or an interviewer. And you know how in every one of those, there's that question about, how do you work with, are you sensitive to people of diverse background and all that stuff? And everybody gives a beautiful answer to get the job. What I'm asking everyone here is, from now on, don't just answer like that. Walk your answer, act your answer. Because if you see it, call it. If somebody says something that they shouldn't say, do something they shouldn't do, call it. If you're in a meeting and somebody demeans somebody, just say it out loud. That's how you really show that you are sensitive to people of diverse background. So that's it. Thank you so much. I'm hoping to set up more of these conversations, whether in this this town hall style or in a smaller forum. However we do it, we'll make sure we get the word out. And please come and support us. Believe me, the fact that this entire meeting here is not only made up of APIDA says a whole lot. So that's really good. I want to thank you for that. So Mary, it's yours.
Thank you, Vi. I really appreciate it. So we're just up against the hour and it's Friday afternoon and I'm sensitive of time for people. But I have taken 4 pages of notes. And I've been at City for over 3 years. And action is what I do. And I saw that Thelma put in the chat box that accountability is key, and it is key. And you can hold me accountable. You can call me out and you can hold me accountable, because I am the person who can make the difference, who can make sure that things happen. I hear you. This is definitely not the end. It has always been our intention in the Race, Equity, and Social Justice Center, as soon as we can come back to a center, to be inclusive of not just race and ethnicity, but all different kinds of groups, because many of the members of our community have more than one race and ethnicity. Kaika was shared with us her biracial child. Also, Sean shared with us LGBTQ plus APITA. So our students will cross over, foster care students. So there will be a variety of different people in the center. The center will be a large thing and it will be resourced. So there's no one group who's going to get any more than any other group. We are in this together. And the only way that we can make the real difference for all of our communities is for us to work and strengthen our communities individually and together. So each group will have their own space in the center, but there will be space for cross-cultural and opportunities for cross-cultural social events, learning events. I mean, we haven't published what the plan is. It's challenging to put all this together in this virtual environment, but I promise you, I'm publicly promising you, and it's being recorded. I promise you, there will be a place for all of our groups that need a place to come together as a group and to come together with others, because that will strengthen LA City College. I am crystal clear that we are not serving our communities, or our population would be very different and would be much, much more vibrant. And it's not the fault of our students ever. We are responsible for that. And I am ultimately responsible. So hold me accountable. I thank you all for coming this afternoon. We will have more opportunities. We will have a group that will work together and help to inform us and plan these for us. I want this to continue. This needs to continue. Thank you. I learned a lot today. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for coming, everybody. I so appreciate it. I really, really appreciate you being brave enough to come out and speak. It's not an easy thing to do, I know. Thank you so much for coming, all of you, and for staying and for being here and being present for this. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I greatly appreciate it. I so greatly appreciate it.
Thanks to V and everybody else who helped organize this.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely, Jeff.
helped run this.
Absolutely.
We couldn't have done it without your
No
help.
way. No way, V. No way could we have done it without you. Thank you. Thank you for your great leadership on this.
Thank you.
And then Anna and Julie.
Oh yeah, I
and
mean,
Jeffrey
and Jeff.
absolutely.
and everyone, and Mickey. Thank you very much for being a part of the meeting on Wednesday and for everything you guys have done.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
And Jeff, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for everybody who's been
Oh
around.
my gosh, your research, Jeff, was awesome.
Thank you.
Sean's PowerPoint was
Great
great.
to hear family.
I know, you can tell with a bunch of professors.
That
We love to talk.
PowerPoint. Okay, bye guys.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Bernadette.
Bye, Mary.
My favorite name.
Yes, of course.
It's my confirmation
I
name.
know, that's why I said
Bye-bye, everybody.
bye, and thank you again.
Hi, Nene. I didn't see you in there, but it's good to see you. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye. Adios.
Adios, Yogi. Bye, everybody.
I love Saul Lemon. He looks like a person almost.
That's great. I know. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.